Listen, I'm going to share something with you. All your assumptions about this 90-day fiancé before the 90 days couple are completely off. I'm talking seriously misguided. What the cameras showed was a romance on shaky ground, but in reality, there was so much more going on behind the scenes. It was a complex web of manipulation, insecurity, obsession, and desperation, all tied together with a secret that the producers didn't want to highlight. This wasn't just a typical long-distance relationship struggling to stay afloat. No, this was a calculated game of power and control, where one person was always strategically planning their next move, staying 3 steps ahead of the other. If you go back to the beginning, you'll see it. The way they talked at the airport, all nervous and stuff. The video calls, where they'd say things like "I've never felt this way before," it sounded real. But not quite. If you really pay attention, you'll notice some weird things. Like, their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. They'd pause for a split second before saying "I love you," like they were thinking about it too much. And when they hugged, it was all stiff and awkward, like they were just going through the motions. It was like they were following a script or something. That's when I started to wonder, what's really going on here? Is this a real love story, or is someone just manipulating the situation? It's creepy when you think about it. The more you watch, the more you'll see these little signs that something's off. It's like you're not really watching a romance. You're watching someone gain control over someone else, slowly but surely. Because here's what no one talks about. Before the flights were booked, before the tears at the airport, before the dramatic music swelled under candlelit dinners, there were DMs. There were deleted comments. There were late-night lives that vanished by morning. And the timelines? Oh, the timelines do not add up. One minute they're claiming exclusivity, and the next minute there are screenshots floating around from someone else who thought they were the only one to. That's not miscommunication. That's strategy. What's really interesting about this situation is how the victim's story was carefully created. Suddenly, every argument was about trust problems. Every time someone confronted them, they would say, "Why are you attacking me?" There's a specific way people talk when they're not really confused, but rather trapped. We saw this tone repeated over and over. They would cry quickly, but their tears would dry just as fast. They would apologize, but never really take responsibility for their actions. They would make promises that sounded great, but were actually very vague. "I'll do better," they would say. But how would they do better? When would they start? What specific actions would they take? There was only silence in response to these questions. The family at home was getting suspicious. You could tell by the way they looked at each other during dinner. They just weren't convinced by what they were being told. The mom, in particular, had this expression on her face, the kind where she's trying not to say anything but you can tell she's thinking something's off. It's like she's trying to figure out what's really going on without being the one to stir up trouble. And that's the thing about families. Sometimes they get involved in your business because they're trying to help. But other times it's just because they're nosy. But then again, sometimes that interference can be a warning sign that something's not quite right. Let's discuss money. Because when it comes to this show, money is never just about the dollars and cents. It's about the power it holds, the sacrifices made, and the point of no return, that moment when you've invested so much that walking away becomes impossible. Think about all the expenses that come with a relationship like this: flights, hotels, gifts, and visa applications don't come cheap. So, when one person constantly reminds the other of their financial contributions, it's not an act of kindness, it's a way of exerting control. That's what we call emotional collateral. If you paid close attention to the confessionals, you might have caught it, that subtle hint of "I've put so much into this." It's a phrase that sounds romantic at first, but it's actually a transactional statement, a reminder of the emotional debt owed. It's not about love or feelings. It's about the price tag attached to the relationship. And that's what makes it so complicated. Because when money is involved, it's no longer just about the heart, but about the balance sheet. The turning point came during that intense argument mid-season. You remember the one? It's the kind of fight where people's voices drop to a whisper, which is always more unsettling than a loud shout. Yelling can be a messy outburst, but controlled anger is a deliberate choice. When allegations of disloyalty and lack of commitment surfaced, instead of denying them, the person deflected the issue. Rather than offering reassurance, they counterattacked with accusations of their own. And just like that, the conversation took a drastic turn. The focus shifted from suspicious messages to feelings of insecurity. The topic changed from secret conversations to trauma. Now, trauma is a real and serious issue. But using it as an excuse to dodge direct questions is a classic manipulation tactic. It's a clever way to avoid accountability, but it's not a genuine response. The sudden pivot in the narrative was a clear attempt to divert attention and regain control of the conversation. By doing so, the person effectively sidestepped the original issue and created a new narrative that was more convenient for them. This kind of behavior can be damaging, as it undermines trust and creates an uneven playing field in the conversation. Take a moment to really think about this. It's amazing how fast people's sympathy can change. One minute someone is asking for clarification, and the next they're being treated like they're the one being aggressive. I mean, if you're seeing the same thing I am, please tell me I'm not losing my mind for noticing this pattern. The way things are edited can only cover up so much before the truth starts to come out. And it's pretty obvious what's really going on. It's like the flaws are starting to show and they can't be hidden forever. Rumors began to circulate behind the scenes, with crew members reportedly sensing tension when the cameras weren't rolling. There were awkward silences in hotel hallways, and cast members would often take separate rides to filming locations. But what really caught people's attention was when a friend back home went live on social media and dropped a cryptic hint that things aren't quite as they appear. The live stream was taken down within hours, but the internet has a way of preserving these things. Screen recordings of the live started making the rounds, and one particular sentence stood out: "You guys are defending the wrong person." This single sentence sparked a lot of curiosity and raised more questions than answers. It was as if the friend was trying to tell us something but without directly saying it. The fact that the live stream was deleted so quickly only added to the mystery, leaving everyone wondering what was really going on. Defending the wrong person. That's when things started to unravel. Old social media posts began to surface and archived photos were dug up. People noticed that the locations tagged in these posts overlapped in some pretty suspicious ways. And just like that, the whole fairy tale started to look more like a patchwork of timelines stitched together, with some very convenient memory lapses. It made you wonder if someone's really as committed as they claim to be. Why would they be leaving flirty comments and emojis on someone else's picture just 2 weeks before jetting off to meet their so-called soulmate? It just didn't add up. The more fans dug, the more they found, and the more it seemed like the truth was being hidden behind a veil of carefully crafted social media posts. But here's where it gets darker. The emotional highs weren't random. They were timed. Big romantic gestures right after big accusations. Gifts after confrontations. Tears after exposure. It created confusion. And confusion creates control. When you don't know whether you're being loved or lied to, you cling tighter hoping the love version wins. The way it all fell into place for TLC was almost too perfect. Conflict brings in viewers, and when things are left unclear, people can't stop talking about it. The more we disagree, the more we care. We pick sides, Team A or Team B, but what if we're all missing the point? Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any crazier, that's when the real mind games started. And suddenly, all those romantic moments from earlier in the season felt like they were being used against us. After that big fight, everything changed. People started feeling sorry for one side, and the comments online turned into a war zone. But then, things seemed to go back to normal. The smiles returned, but they looked fake. The cute nicknames came back, but they sounded like they were being used just to manipulate us. If you were paying attention, you could almost see the wheels turning behind every apology, every sweet word. It was like they were trying to make us believe something, but it didn't quite feel real. This is the point where being manipulated emotionally isn't sneaky anymore. It's actually a plan. When someone is confronted about suspicious behavior and inconsistent stories, you'd expect a straightforward admission or denial. But instead, the response was emotional, tears, vulnerability, and a revelation of childhood trauma. Now, it's essential to acknowledge that trauma is a real and sensitive issue and nobody is dismissing its significance. However, it's suspicious when this trauma only seems to surface during conversations about accountability, and then mysteriously disappears when the topic shifts to romance. This isn't about healing or genuine emotional expression. It's about manipulating the narrative to avoid taking responsibility. The conversation took a surprising turn, shifting from a discussion about private messages to a deeper exploration of trust and emotional scars. What started as a conversation about flirtatious behavior and suspicious interactions suddenly became about something much more profound: the fear of being left behind. The person who initially raised some very legitimate concerns somehow ended up saying sorry for being too tough on their partner. But here's the thing: this change in direction didn't feel natural. It felt almost calculated. The way the conversation flipped was just too smooth, too seamless. It was as if someone had deliberately steered the conversation in a new direction, away from the original issue and onto more sensitive ground. You know that feeling when you're in the middle of an argument and somehow you end up saying sorry, even though you're not really sure why. It's like you're walking away from the conversation and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, what just happened? You're left feeling confused and wondering why you were the one apologizing in the first place. It's a pretty weird sensation, right? Things start to get complicated in a whole different way. As the emotional drama was unfolding on screen, there were quiet rumors going around about who was in control. At first, it was small stuff, like who had access to whose phone or who stopped following who on social media. Then, someone would change their profile picture right after filming was over. It was all pretty subtle. But then, things took a turn. The people in the relationship started to push away their friends and family, who were expressing concern. They'd say things like, "You're just a negative influence," or "You don't want us to be happy." That's not just normal relationship tension, that's like marking your territory. It's a way of saying, "This is mine and you can't have it," and it's not healthy. And the money dynamic? Oh, it got uglier. In a moment of candid conversation, a remark about financial backing was made, almost too casually. The words "I've helped so much" already hung in the air, carrying a significant amount of weight. This is because, in long-distance relationships, an imbalance in financial support can lead to a delicate emotional debt. When one person feels obligated to the other for things like travel expenses, gifts, or visa fees, it can disrupt the balance of power. This, in turn, can create an uncomfortable silence where there should be open discussion, and a sense of gratitude where there should be clear boundaries. As a result, the dynamics of the relationship can become skewed, making it challenging for the couple to navigate their feelings and interactions with each other. The comment, though made in passing, revealed a complex issue that can have far-reaching consequences in a relationship. Cultural differences were being played like a game of strategy. Whenever someone disagreed, it would quickly turn into "You just don't get my culture" now. Cultural misunderstandings are definitely real, but when people use their cultural identity to brush off every single criticism, it's no longer about explaining, it's about dodging the issue. That was the instant when my heart sank. There's this one moment that's easy to overlook, but it's really important. The person who was being confronted about their lies was asked a straightforward question. It was simple, yet powerful. "Were you talking to someone else while we were together?" Instead of giving an answer, there was just silence. Not because they were confused or trying to deny it, but because they didn't want to respond. Then, they turned it around and said, "Why are you questioning me like this?" That's not a misunderstanding, that's clearly avoiding the truth. It's a way of sidestepping the issue and shifting the focus away from their own actions. If you're feeling the tension building the same way I did, pause for a second and really think about how often reality TV edits try to protect someone's image. Because sometimes what we're shown is already the softened version. Things were looking up for the couple, or so it seemed. But then something happened that made a huge splash on social media. Someone I used to think was a friend, I'm not even sure I'd call them that now, started posting some pretty weird stuff online. At first, it was just a bunch of vague messages that hinted they had been around during the beginning of our relationship. They didn't mention any names, just posted some timestamps, song lyrics, and screenshots where they blurred out important details, but you could still see the dates. And when I looked closer, I realized those dates were way too close to the times we'd had those super romantic "I love you forever" video calls. It was all really suspicious and uncomfortable. The internet detectives did what they always do. They zoomed, they enhanced, they compared outfits, and within hours, speculation turned into near certainty. The timelines overlapped. And not by accident. Here's what really happened, a surprise turn of events that caught everyone off guard. Instead of just saying it wasn't true, the response was a clever attempt to manipulate people's perceptions. The person said things like "You're all getting it wrong," or "Some people just want attention," or "You don't have all the facts." But what's interesting is what they didn't say. They never actually said "It's not true." That's a pretty important phrase. And its absence is quite telling, and this is where public opinion started to fracture again. Because the partner who had been questioning everything suddenly looked exhausted, drained, smaller somehow, like someone constantly trying to prove their own reality is real. That's the kind of exhaustion you can't fake. Production tried to steer things back to romance. We got a dramatic dinner scene, a heartfelt speech about commitment, promises about engagement rings and future babies, but it felt like putting glitter over cracks in the foundation. And then came the financial bombshell. A secret message was leaked. And it looked like money was being sent for more than just travel. It seemed like it was also for help with things like bills and personal expenses. But here's the thing, these transfers were never talked about on the show. When someone was confronted about it, they kept changing their story. At first, they said "You offered," but then they said "I didn't ask." However, there were screenshots that showed requests being made, and they were made at very emotional moments. This isn't a partnership, it's using vulnerability to get what you want, and that's not okay. It's like using leverage to control someone, but making it look like you're being vulnerable and weak. I think I see what you're getting at. It's like they're trying to dodge the truth. Every time someone tries to hold them accountable, they change their story to something more vague, something that's harder to pin down. It's like they're constantly shifting the goalposts, making it impossible to get a clear answer. Are they just trying to avoid taking responsibility, or is there something more going on? Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but it seems like a pretty suspicious pattern to me. And then things take another surprising turn, making everything even more complicated than you thought possible. Because buried in all of this chaos is one detail that changes everything. A detail that hasn't fully aired. A confrontation that reportedly happened off camera. A message that was never meant to be read publicly. The moment that changed everything didn't happen on camera. It didn't have dramatic background music. It didn't come with a slow zoom or a confessional cutaway. It happened in the quiet, in between filming days, when producers weren't mic'd up and the illusion of a controlled storyline cracked wide open. And when that information leaked, it didn't just stir the pot, it detonated it. So it turns out that there was a big argument behind the scenes, and it never made it to the show. This argument was about a phone, but not just any phone, a second phone that someone had. Now, before you think this is just another made-up rumor, hear me out. The person who had been questioning everything apparently found some messages on this phone that didn't quite add up with what they had been told. The language was different, the time zone was different, and the tone was different too. And when they asked about it, instead of getting an explanation, they just got a lot of panic. It seemed like someone might have been hiding something. And it's not hard to guess what that might be. The fact that they panicked when confronted about it says a lot. I mean, if everything was okay, then why get so defensive? It's pretty clear that something fishy was going on. And this second phone was at the center of it all, not confusion, panic. What people see on the surface is one thing, it's just a friend, that's all. But when you dig deeper, that's when things start to fall apart. Apparently, this friend was getting the same special treatment as everyone else. They were being called the same cute names, being made the same promises about the future, and being told they're the one, all the same lines that were being played out for everyone to see. And that's when it stops being about feeling insecure and starts being about something more. It's about copying someone else's moves word for word to parallel love stories, one televised, one hidden. But what's even more troubling is that the one we can't see might have been the one to start it all. That completely turns everything upside down. Now we're not wondering if they can work together, but rather which one was genuine and which one was just filling in. The whole turnaround we saw in the middle of the season, the emotional confession, the half-hearted apologies, and the vows to regain trust now seems like it was just a cleverly planned move to save face. It's almost as if it was all just a strategy to minimize the damage. What if the real reason things seemed to settle down wasn't because of any actual progress or self-improvement, but because the situation was simply being kept under control? Maybe the calmness was just a result of containment, rather than any genuine growth or change. And here's where the manipulation becomes almost cinematic. What happens when someone discovers a shocking truth, like a cheating partner, and then the tables are turned? The person who was wronged starts saying sorry, not the one who did the wrong. They're apologizing for looking into the issue, for not having faith, and for causing tension. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a clever trick of the mind. The focus shifts from the actual problem to how it was found out. The real issue gets overshadowed by the reaction to it. It's like the person who was cheated on is now the one in the wrong, just because of how they found out. This is a perfect example of psychological manipulation, where the blame is turned around and the victim is made to feel guilty. That is advanced level deflection on the internet. People started to notice something strange. When filming was finished but the episodes hadn't been shown yet, posts on social media seemed fake. There were big announcements, too many photos of couples, and long messages about getting through tough times. If you've ever seen a relationship try to deal with a scandal in real time, you know what happens. The more they show off, the more problems they're really having. It's like they're trying too hard to convince everyone that everything is okay, when really, it's not. Fans were picking up on this, and it was making them wonder what was really going on. The posts seemed like they were trying to prove something rather than just being genuine. And that's what made them seem eerie. But here comes the twist that makes everything spiral. So there's this person, let's call them a friend, who supposedly sent some messages and receipts from their second phone. These messages were time-stamped, and there were even voice notes. But what's really interesting is that one of these messages included a promise to visit. And the timing of this promise matches up perfectly with a visit that was shown on TV. What's even more shocking is that while one person was getting on a plane to see their partner, the other person was being told, "Don't worry, your turn is coming soon." It's like they were being strung along. with the other person making promises they had no intention of keeping. Let that sink in. This has gone beyond just mixed signals. It's now a case of putting effort into two different things at the same time. As this news started spreading through private fan groups, something really interesting happened. The way people were talking about it changed. Now, everyone was wondering, was the person they saw on TV just being used to get more attention? Was it all just part of a story? Or was it about getting financial help? Was this whole romance just a way to get ahead? Things take on a different appearance when viewed from that perspective. The need to seem dedicated on camera starts to look like a calculated move. The carefully managed moments of vulnerability begin to feel like they're being used to get something in return. But just as you think the person who's been cheated on is completely innocent, some rumors start to come out that make you question their story. It turns out they may have been seeing someone else when all this started. There are old social media posts that suggest they weren't entirely single at the time. And then there's a blurry photo where someone has been cropped out, but you can tell they were standing really close. Plus, there was an anniversary post that was deleted right before filming began, which raises even more suspicions. This situation just keeps getting worse. And that's what makes it so hard to look away. It's like nobody is totally innocent, you know? And that's what makes the whole thing so fascinating. We're not just seeing a basic story of good versus bad anymore. Now we have to people who might both be carrying around old baggage and secrets. When you mix together feelings of not being good enough with a desire to succeed, and then add in the stress of being apart and the pressure of being in the public eye, and on top of that, you have a big franchise like 90 Day Fiancé watching your every move. It's not love that you get. It's an explosion waiting to happen. The situation is volatile, and with all these factors at play, it's no wonder things can get out of control. The combination of insecurity, ambition, and the scrutiny of the public and the franchise can be overwhelming, leading to a combustible situation that's just waiting to ignite. And here's something that hasn't been discussed enough: the psychological toll of performing romance for millions while privately questioning everything. Imagine doubting your partner but needing to smile for confessionals. Imagine suspecting betrayal but filming engagement ring shopping scenes. That level of emotional dissonance doesn't just cause arguments, it causes breakdowns. People who know the couple say they had huge fights that were much worse than what was shown. They accused each other of trying to get famous, and even threatened to quit the show in the middle of filming. At one point, things got so bad that the people making the show had to stop filming because the tension was too much to handle. Unmanageable. You don't often hear that word in reality TV. It's not something people throw around casually. Now, let's take a closer look at this situation. If things are going down the way they seem to be, then that title we've all been joking about, "Am I the drama?" isn't funny anymore. It's like the person who asked that question already knew what was up. What if they were aware of the answer all along and were just starting to catch on? That changes everything, doesn't it? The title goes from being a lighthearted joke to something almost predictive. It's like the person was hinting at something and we're only now realizing what it might mean. What if the chaos wasn't accidental? What if it was curated? Just when it seemed like the worst was already out, a new bombshell dropped. This time, it was something from before the show even started filming. It looks like this relationship might have started as a rebound, or even worse, as a plan B. If you thought the second phone scandal was the most shocking thing, think again. This new evidence flips the whole story on its head, and it's not going to end well. The idea that this was all just a backup plan wasn't just some crazy fan theory. A screenshot from months before the show 90 Day Fiancé, before the 90 days even began filming, has surfaced. And it shows the couple talking about trying out for a show. Not about falling in love, not about being together, just about trying out. It's like they were just looking for a way to get on TV, not to actually find love. This changes everything, and it's hard to see how their relationship can recover from this. The whole thing is starting to look like a big sham. And it's getting harder to believe anything they say, and suddenly every romantic confession felt auditioned. The tone of those initial conversations was surprisingly calculated, not romantic. Phrases like "we'd be great on TV" and "our story would really resonate with people" kept coming up. It sounded like a plan to get attention, not build a life together. That's the kind of talk you'd expect from someone looking to boost their public image, not from someone genuinely interested in a relationship. And the real kicker is that the idea to seek out this exposure apparently didn't even come from the person everyone's been accusing of being manipulative. It actually came from the one we've all been rooting for. Let that breathe for a second. When two people start a relationship and they're both looking for something to gain, it's not always clear who's taking advantage of who. The idea that one person is a victim doesn't really hold up. Maybe one person was more dishonest, but that doesn't mean the other person was completely clueless. If you look at the facts, it seems like both parties knew what they were getting into. This is the point where things get complicated and it's hard to tell what's real and what's not. It's like a game of emotional manipulation, but both players are using different tactics. One person uses their weaknesses to get what they want, while the other uses their charm and innocence to distract from the truth. When one gets caught, they break down in tears and the other pretends to be confused, like they have no idea what's going on. But here's the thing, amidst all the drama and manipulation, genuine emotions might have actually developed. And that's what makes it even more messed up. Because here's the dangerous part about starting something for clout. Sometimes the emotions become real before the motives disappear. And when real attachment collides with fake beginnings, you don't get clarity. You get chaos. And chaos escalated fast. Something interesting happened during a live show after the season ended. One of the partners, who had been shown as being really surprised by something, said something that caught people's attention. They mentioned giving up more than people realize at first. It seemed like a joke and everyone laughed it off. But fans didn't let it go. They clipped the video, replayed it, and even zoomed in on the partner's face to see their reaction. And what they saw didn't look like someone who was joking around. It looked like they were actually feeling resentful. Resentment is relationship poison. It seems that there's more to the story than initially meets the eye. Apparently, some insiders are suggesting that the financial backing wasn't just a one-way street. Not only did the money flow in, but there were also assurances of shared profits if the show became a success. Phrases like "we'll build something together" and "we'll monetize this" were allegedly thrown around. This changes the whole dynamic of the situation, making it seem less like a straightforward case of financial support and more like a business deal. That's gone bad. The power struggle over money doesn't seem so one-sided anymore. And here's where things get explosive. The person they were talking to on the second phone, it turns out, was more than just someone they were romantically involved with. Apparently, this person had known about the TV show idea from the very start. So, while one partner believed they were in an exclusive relationship, the other person was aware that this relationship was also being used as a way to get on the show. That's not just being unfaithful, it's actually working together to deceive someone. It's a whole different level of betrayal. The betrayal isn't just emotional anymore. It's reputation. Imagine being embarrassed in front of everyone, and on top of that, finding out you might have helped build the thing that made you feel that way. That's not just painful, it's also really confusing. It makes you question who you are and what you've done. If you didn't mean to do anything wrong, but you also didn't know what was going on, then where do you stand? It's like your whole sense of self is broken into pieces. You're not totally blameless, but you're also not totally guilty. So what does that make you? It's a tough spot to be in, and it can be really hard to figure out how to move forward from there. And let's not ignore the family dynamic that exploded once these rumors gained traction. That dinner scene we saw earlier in the season, it hits differently now. The skepticism, the side-eye glances, the hesitant congratulations. It wasn't just protective instinct. It might have been prior knowledge. Family members allegedly knew about the TV opportunity angle long before the tears at the airport. Which means when they expressed doubt on camera, they weren't doubting love. They were doubting authenticity. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. What if the entire arc we watched was a tug-of-war between two people who both thought they were outsmarting the other? One thinking, "I'll secure my future," the other thinking, "I'll secure my platform." But it didn't occur to them that the internet would keep a record of all the receipts. At this point, public opinion has fractured into three camps. Those who believe one partner orchestrated everything. Those who believe the other entered knowingly and just lost control of the narrative. And those who think they both underestimated how messy real emotions would become once cameras amplified every insecurity. So let's stop for a minute and think about this. If a relationship starts out as a plan, but then it becomes real, does that make the lying okay? Or does it actually make things worse? I mean, we're not just talking about people trying to get attention or fame. We're talking about real emotions and feelings that are involved in a situation that's based on a lie. Both people are aware of what's going on, but they're still getting caught up in their emotions. And that's what makes it so complicated. The franchise machine, especially a juggernaut like TLC, thrives on blurred lines between authenticity and performance. But this situation? It's starting to feel less like reality TV drama and more like a psychological thriller, disguised as romance. And just when fans thought they had finally gotten to the bottom of things, a new leak surfaced. This time, it didn't come from some supposed friend of the show or a random blogger trying to stir up drama. No, this leak came from someone who actually worked behind the scenes. someone who was adjacent to the production team and had access to the inner workings of the show, claimed that during filming, one partner threatened to quit unless certain scenes were cut, specifically, scenes involving direct confrontation about pre-show intentions. If that's true, then what we saw wasn't just edited for time. It was edited for image control. That means there is video footage that has not been shown to us yet. Footage that could confirm whether the drama was self-awareness or foreshadowing. If that hidden footage ever comes out, it's going to completely change the way we see this couple. And just when you thought this story had already shown us every possible side of deceit, ego, insecurity, and ambition, the emotional fallout starts to emerge, and surprisingly, it's even more chaotic than the scandal itself. It's like the story just keeps getting more and more complicated, with new layers of drama and tension coming to the surface. The aftermath of all this is really messy, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. What people don't tell you is that when a relationship on a reality TV show falls apart in front of everyone, it doesn't just end when the cameras stop rolling. Actually, it's just the beginning. Things start to fall apart even faster. After the drama of the reunion episodes died down and fans stopped taking sides, the silence between them became really loud. They didn't post together anymore. No more perfect couple photos or messages that seemed to say we're doing great, without really saying it. Instead, we noticed some smaller things that said a lot. They quietly stopped following each other on social media, deleted some of their favorite memories together, and even changed their bio to remove a heart symbol that had been there for a long time. It was like they were slowly erasing their relationship from the public eye. And it was pretty telling. The changes were subtle, but they spoke volumes about what was really going on between them. And if you've watched enough reality TV fallout, you already know digital distance speaks volumes, but here's where the tension reignites. During an off-the-cuff interview clip that circulated online, one partner was asked directly, "Do you regret anything?" And the response wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't longing. It was irritation. "I regret trusting people who weren't honest with me." Plural, people, not person. That one word was all it took to open a door that we never even knew existed. And it's amazing how something so small can have such a big impact. Because now the implication isn't just romantic betrayal. It's production betrayal, friend betrayal, possibly even audience betrayal. And when someone feels betrayed by that many layers at once, they don't just withdraw, they retaliate. Then came a quiet but powerful response. One that revealed the truth in a subtle way. It wasn't a big public confession or a crazy outburst on social media. No, it was more subtle, planned even. Just a repost here, a sneaky like there, and a comment under a fan theory that said interesting perspective, with a smirk emoji at the end. These little online clues kept people guessing and talking, without directly accusing anyone of anything. They were like a trail of hints that kept everyone engaged and curious. The kind of thing that makes you wonder what's really going on, and what someone might be trying to say without actually saying it. And then came the financial tension again. Things apparently didn't go as planned after the show. The idea of building a brand together fell apart. They started making separate deals and didn't have each other's backs. The promise to work together turned into "I'm doing my own thing now." It seemed like one person was getting ahead faster than the other. And what was supposed to be a joint effort started to look like a solo act. The partnership that was supposed to be a team effort ended up being all about individual success. They had started out with big dreams, but in the end, it was every person for themselves. Resentment doesn't disappear. It mutates. And here's the part that feels almost Shakespearean in its irony. The very platform that may have started as a calculated move ended up amplifying every crack in the foundation. The exposure they both wanted became the spotlight that revealed everything they hoped would stay hidden. Whispers began circulating that one partner felt used for storyline, used for tears, used for sympathy, used for relatability. And when that narrative flipped in fan spaces, when the once defended partner started facing scrutiny, you could feel the panic. Because being the hero in a messy romance is profitable, being the villain? Not so much. Things start to get really intense now. There were rumors of a last showdown, no cameras, no editing, no sugarcoating for a big audience. It was a private talk where people said some pretty harsh things to each other, and no one jumped in to calm things down. Words like planned and selfish were thrown around. Someone even said, "You knew exactly what you were doing," and apparently, the most unsettling thing said that night was, "You thought you could keep it from me." Find out what? That's the question that refuses to settle. Because despite all the leaks, all the receipts, all the timeline analysis, there's still something unsaid. Something bigger than overlapping DMs or pre-show ambitions. Something that made one partner look shaken in a way we hadn't seen before. And here's where I need you to sit with this with me. What if the second phone wasn't just about another romantic interest? What if it was about conversations regarding long-term plans that didn't include the televised partner at all? Immigration discussions, career pivots, backup arrangements. When someone is trying to keep their options open while pretending to be exclusive, it's not just about complicated relationships. It's about being smart and looking out for yourself. But before we rush to paint one mastermind and one victim, remember, both entered this with at least some awareness of the spotlight. Both agreed to film. Both leaned into dramatic confessionals. Both benefited from the early attention. Now we are faced with a truth that is really hard to accept. Maybe the drama wasn't one-sided, maybe it was co-authored. Just when it seems like things are calming down, something unexpected pops up out of nowhere. A mysterious message appeared in the dead of night, set against a dark backdrop with only 3 words shining bright and white. Truth always surfaces. No tags, no context, no clarification. Fans immediately spiraled. Was it about the relationship? About production? About another hidden player we haven't even uncovered yet? Because here's the thing about secrets in the world of 90 Day Fiancé, they don't stay buried. Not when ex-friends are watching. Not when former situationships feel slighted. Not when NDA letters expire. If only half of the rumors are true, then we still haven't seen the whole picture. There might be more to this story that hasn't come out yet. It's possible that the most surprising part is still hidden, and when it's finally revealed, it could change everything. This whole situation has been leading up to one big question. And now, things are about to take a strange turn. It's no longer like a crazy reality TV show, but more like a slow and creepy mystery that we're not ready for. After that weird truth always surfaces post, something changed. But it didn't happen in a big, public way. It wasn't some dramatic live stream meltdown. It was actually really quiet and controlled. And to be honest, it's even more unsettling because of that. A week had passed since the story faded away, when a fan account suddenly released what they said was an old voice message. The sound quality was poor and it was hard to understand what was going on. But the voice sounded like someone people knew, and that was enough to cause a huge stir online. In the recording, someone was talking about waiting for the right moment and keeping their choices open. There was a laugh. But it wasn't a happy laugh or a nervous laugh. It was a laugh that sounded like the person was thinking carefully about what they were doing. And then there was the line that made everyone stop and pay attention. If you never take a big risk, you can't lose. Now pause, because that one sentence reframes the entire relationship. If you don't put yourself out there completely, you're not really taking a chance on getting hurt. Instead, you're putting someone else in a position where they might get hurt because of you. The argument blew up in no time. People were wondering if the voice was genuine or not. Had it been manipulated or taken out of context? But what's interesting is that nobody ever completely denied it. All we got were some vague comments about made-up stories, and people trying to get attention, and the one thing that could have really shut down the debate, a clear "that's not me," was never said. Silence can be louder than confession, and suddenly, moments from the season replayed differently in your mind. The hesitations before saying forever, the oddly timed tears, the way future plans were always framed with a safety net. If everything works out, if we're still strong, if it's meant to be, conditional language. Always conditional. You can see the change in someone when they start to feel like they're not on the same page as the other person. At first, they might look worried or unsure, but then they start to look different, more closed off, like they're putting up a wall. Conversations get shorter and they stop smiling for real. There's a certain look people get when they figure out they've been playing by different rules all along, and it's like they're seeing the other person in a whole new light. That's when things started to get really interesting, and the final surprise began to unfold. Because what if the real betrayal wasn't romantic? What if it was strategic abandonment? Sources began whispering that once filming wrapped and contracts were fulfilled, communication slowed dramatically. Plans that had once been urgent became vague. Visits postponed. Calls missed. Messages left on read for hours, then days. And when confronted, the explanation was simple: I'm overwhelmed. But overwhelmed with what? Fame, opportunities? Or the weight of keeping too many narratives straight? And here's where it gets devastating. There are rumors going around that a proposal was talked about, but not necessarily as something real. It might have been used just to make the story more interesting. Maybe it was even sped up or made more dramatic to get a reaction. And supposedly, when one of the people in the relationship started thinking that the proposal would make their bond stronger, the other person had doubts when the cameras weren't rolling. And we never got to see that part. Imagine believing a ring equals security, only to find out it might have equaled ratings. That kind of moment doesn't just damage trust, It completely changes how you see things. It's been months since the season ended, and we're still seeing the aftermath unfold. The couple is now doing solo brand endorsements, making separate public appearances, and giving interviews with carefully chosen words that don't really confirm or deny what's going on with their relationship. The uncertainty seems deliberate, and that's probably because as long as fans are left wondering, they'll stay invested and keep talking about it. This way, the buzz around them remains high, and people will continue to speculate about what's really going on. But here's the haunting part. In a recent appearance, when asked directly, "Were you ever truly in love?" there was a long pause. Not dramatic, not tearful, just long. And then the answer, "I cared. I still care, not yes, not of course, just care." Care is safe. Care is non-committal. Care doesn't require sacrifice. It hits me. Is the drama actually me? Because maybe the question was never about self-awareness, maybe it was about narrative control. If you call yourself the drama first, you disarm everyone else. If you lean into chaos, you own it before it owns you. And if this entire relationship was built on half-truths and parallel motives, then the real mastermind isn't the one who cried the most or the one who looked the calmest. This person knew how powerful it is to change how people think about things. Now we come to the last part. The one that still hasn't been completely revealed. There are murmurs about another person. Not the friend, not the second phone situation. Someone new. Someone who allegedly overlaps suspiciously with the post-season silence. And if that timeline proves true, it won't just confirm emotional detachment. It will confirm replacement. Because if one partner was already positioning a new connection, while the old one was still publicly defending the relationship, then everything we watched wasn't a tragic love story. It was a stepping stone. We're now faced with a situation where everything seems to fit together, but the outcome is more unpleasant than we anticipated. It appears that two individuals may have entered this situation for personal gain. One of them became more deeply invested than they had initially planned, while the other never completely let go of their backup plan. Meanwhile, the franchise's machinery highlighted every single insecurity, putting them under the intense scrutiny of the public eye. Courtesy of TLC, this combination of factors has created a rather unflattering picture, one that we can't help but stare at in dismay. The pieces of the puzzle may fit, but the resulting image is far from attractive, and it's hard to look away from the mess that's been created. So here's the question that keeps circling back, the one that refuses to settle quietly. If you start a relationship as strategy and end it as survival, were you ever in love at all? Or were you just rehearsing? Because if even one more receipt drops, one more message, one more voice memo, one more overlapping date, this entire saga doesn't just become messy. It's finally clear. Just when everyone thought the drama had died down, when all the speculation had slowed to a crawl and the online discussions had calmed down, something new popped up quietly without making a big fuss. It's the kind of thing that doesn't need to shout to get attention. It just waits patiently for someone to notice it. And when they do, it's unmistakable. The truth is, sometimes these little details can be easy to miss, but once you see them, you can't ignore them. They just sit there, quietly waiting to be discovered, and when they are, it's like a puzzle piece falling into place. It's not flashy or attention-grabbing, but it's undeniable, and it changes everything. A tagged location, that's all it was at first. A simple geotag in the background of a friend's post. But the date? The date overlapped with a weekend that, publicly, was supposed to be dedicated to working on the relationship. And suddenly the timeline fractures again. Because if you were allegedly fighting to save something, why were you somewhere else entirely? It's like they just slowly faded away from each other. No big announcement, no official word that it's over. Just a quiet drifting apart. And then, right on cue, a new person starts showing up in their Instagram stories. At first, it's just a glimpse, a shoulder, a laugh in the background, a reflection in sunglasses. But fans are quick to zoom in and start speculating. When someone commented, "Is that who I think it is?" the response was surprisingly casual. No defensiveness at all. It was a single smirk emoji. That's not denial, that's provocation. This is where things take a turn from focusing on the pain of a breakup to exploring the idea of replacing someone. Just because someone moves on quickly doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to hide something. However, when you start to develop feelings for someone else before you're fully over your previous relationship, that's a whole different situation. And if what people are saying is even partially true, it seems like the emotional detachment was happening long before the breakup actually occurred. This all started a long time before people realized something was off. Meanwhile, the partner left behind, the one who once looked like they were clinging to reassurance, has shifted to stronger tone, sharper interviews, subtle references to lessons learned. There's growth there. But there's also something else. A quiet fury that hasn't fully been released. So let's take a closer look at what happened on 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. We saw the couples being really open and honest with each other, which is pretty brave. There were some tough conversations with people accusing each other of things, and then apologizing for their mistakes. But even with all the talking and apologizing, things didn't really get wrapped up. The story just kind of left us hanging without a clear ending. It's like we were waiting for something to be resolved. But it never really happened, which means we may have been watching the beginning of an unraveling, not the end of one. Because sources close to the situation are now hinting at something bigger than romantic betrayal. Something contractual. Something involving clauses and edits and what was promised versus what was delivered. And if that's true, then the manipulation wasn't just emotional. It was structural. Imagine thinking you're entering a love story, only to discover you were stepping into someone else's long-term strategy. Not just for visibility, but for positioning, immigration pathways, business branding, personal reinvention. The relationship wasn't the goal. It was the launch pad. And if that realization hit after real feelings developed, that's not just embarrassing. That's devastating. However, there's still one thing that prevents this whole story from coming to a close, the loose end. That's still dangling. Because despite the distance, despite the subtle shade, despite the new faces and the quiet rebrands, neither party has fully closed the door. No clean breakup statement. No definitive "we're done," just ambiguity, and ambiguity is currency in this franchise. As long as people are questioning, engagement stays high. As long as fans debate who was the villain, relevance survives. Which leads to the most uncomfortable possibility of all. What if the chaos isn't over because it's still useful? In the world of 90 Day Fiancé, drama is not just about conflict. It's actually a way to stay in the spotlight. And if someone can keep people talking without really saying anything, that's not a coincidence. That's a talent. They know how to keep the attention on themselves, even if it means not revealing too much. It's a clever way to keep their name in the conversation. And it's clearly working for them, but here's where the cliffhanger tightens its grip. A recent blind item posted by a well-known reality gossip page hinted that a former couple from the franchise is considering a surprise return, not together necessarily, but in overlapping storylines. And if you think producers wouldn't capitalize on unresolved tension, you haven't been paying attention. Picture this, you're face to face with someone who might have taken advantage of you. And to make matters worse, it all went down on camera. And now it's happening all over. Again. Imagine receipts being read out loud, instead of leaked quietly. Imagine that unseen footage from earlier in the season finally surfacing, under the excuse of giving fans closure, because if that happens, the narrative resets completely. The victim could become the strategist. The strategist could become exposed. And the question, am I the drama, would no longer be rhetorical. It would be answered, but until that footage drops, until someone decides to stop speaking in cryptic captions and start speaking in direct sentences, we're left suspended in the most addictive place reality TV can keep us, uncertainty. So here we are, two people. One franchise. A pile of overlapping timelines, a second phone, a possible third person, unseen footage, unfinished business. And a single question, echoing louder than ever. If you knew exactly what you were doing from the start, was it ever chaos? Or was it always control? I have a feeling that there's still more to this story that hasn't come out yet. And when the final piece lands, it won't just confirm who the drama was.